Hello, good evening. I hope everyone's feeling okay today. Today we're going to look at, page 74. But before we look at page 74, I just want to point out that on page 73, there is one exercise which we haven't done, which is exercise 4, speaking. So we'll tackle this in our Wednesday video class, but just in case you're not able to connect or for whatever reason, feel free to send me an audio to WhatsApp so I can correct, if you're interested, okay? So that was just a little note about exercise 4 before we move on to page 74. Now on page 74, how exciting, a new unit 8A, doctor's orders, how appropriate. So maybe we learn some much needed medical vocabulary. So let's talk about the quote in the top right hand corner. Can you see? Can you see here? We have the only way to keep your health is to eat what you don't want, drink what you don't like, and do what you'd rather not. Well, that sounds like a bit of a challenge. Do you think it's really so difficult to keep your health? Well, this was said by Mark Twain, a very famous US author, very famous for his, let's say, his ironic perhaps quotes. No, he also had one about golf. No, golf is a good walk spoiled. No, he's contributed quite a lot of these famous, inspiring maybe quotations in the English language. Now, today we're going to look at exercise 1, vocabulary and speaking, but just to point out, in this unit, we will be looking at gerunds and infinitives. I know you can't wait. We will be looking at health and medicine vocabulary and similes. Do you like similes? And we will be looking at the pronunciation of the famous, or should I say infamous, schwa. No, the most common sound in the English language. I know you can't wait. So bear with me, because first we have to do exercise 1, vocabulary and speaking. Now here clearly the focus is going to be on vocabulary. And we have quite a lot of medical vocabulary to talk about. So can you see it says health and medicine. How much medical vocabulary do you know? Now, I'm sure there are some of you, for example, Esther, who knows quite a lot of medical vocabulary, and I'm going to say probably even more medical vocabulary than me. But this exercise is not bad for the basics. Okay, now let's see. How good a doctor are you? So let's look at question 1. When might you get a bruise? Watch the pronunciation there. We don't pronounce really that I, a bruise, a blister, a rash, or side effects. Now, let's go question by question so that it's not overwhelming. So let's have a look, first of all, at question number 1. Now, let's see. A bruise, a blister, a rash, and side effects. Well, number 1A, it says, you might get a bruise from a fall, maybe from being hit by somebody, or knocking against something. So essentially, if you have a bruise, this incident will leave you with a blue, brown, or purple mark. Now, I am blessed with the gift of bruising very easily. It's a gift. I know. I'm grateful for it, So you get these little blue, brown, or kind of even purple marks, on your skin, maybe from a fall, from being hit by somebody, from knocking against something, and the result is a bruise. Now, number 2, a blister. Oh, don't you just love a good blister? Well, when would you get a blister? You would get a blister perhaps from walking a long way in uncomfortable shoes, or from wearing shoes that are too tight. Now, again, these are just examples, because a blister is a swelling on the skin which is filled with liquid. And no matter how tempted you are, don't burst it, don't pop it. But I think as well, you could perhaps get a blister even from a burn. Maybe if you were burned, maybe by some oil in your kitchen, maybe you're cooking, it's very hot. But I think the example of the shoes is a very simple, typical example. Now, when would you get a rash? Well, a rash is usually, not always, but usually an allergic reaction to something, Or you can get it with certain children's illnesses, for example, measles. Now, measles is sarampion. No? So what is a rash? It's an area of red spots on the skin, like an irritation on the skin, very typically caused by allergic reactions. Very nice. And then maybe you have to put some antihistamine cream or something. And letter D, side effects. Oh, well, side effects, no? When would you suffer from side effects? Well, it's the bad effect that a drug has on you. These are the side effects. No? Very good. Now, are you ready for question number 2? Let's take a look, shall we, at question number 2. No? Oopsie, excuse me. My fingers are like butter today. Why might you be given A plaster, B, a bandage, C, antibiotics, D, stitches, E, an x-ray, F, a scan, G, an anesthetic? Okay, I think you should have some ideas. Will we check? Let's check. Are you ready? So number 2, let's see. The first one is a plaster. So you would probably be given a plaster to cover a cut that is not serious. It's a small piece of material, sometimes plastic now, which sticks to the skin, a plaster. Letter B is a bandage. So you would be given a bandage to protect a part of the body that has been hurt, or after a sprain. Very typical to sprain your ankle, maybe your wrist. No? So what is a bandage? It's a strip of cloth wound around a part of the body. A strip of cloth wound around a part of the body. That's a bandage. Now, when would you be given antibiotics? Well, if you have a bacterial infection, but not a virus. Now, remember, we never get antibiotics for a virus, no? And it's a kind of medicine. For example, I think the most famous antibiotic is penicillin, no? Letter D, stitches. When would you be given stitches? Well, I think you would be given stitches for a deep cut, no? Or after an operation. So what is a stitch? A stitch is a short piece of thread used with a needle to sew up a wound. No? So stitches would be to sew up a wound. No? Very nice. What about letter E, an x-ray? Well, you'll be given an x-ray, I think, especially to check if a bone is broken, for example. No? So what is an x-ray? An x-ray is a photograph which shows bones or organs in the body. And when would you be given a scan? Now, remember, in English, I often tell you before, we're not very specific about our kind of medical vocabulary. Of course, the professionals are, but the lay people, like myself, no, we're kind of a little bit simple. I don't want to say simple in general, but simple with respect to how we talk about medicine. So when we talk about a scan in English, now, you might get a scan if you're pregnant to check the baby's progress, or, for example, to check muscles or internal organs. Now, I know there are many different specific types of scans, but in English, we just say a scan. So, for example, for a back problem, maybe for joint problems, no? So it is a medical test in which a machine produces an image on a computer screen. Okay? So anything that is a medical test which produces an image on a computer screen is a scan. No, but for example, the specific scan for, like our example in pregnancy, is called obviously an ultrasound. But we don't say in English, oh, I'm going to have an ultrasound. No, we say I'm going to have a scan. Okay, so I know there are many different types of scans, but in English we don't tend to be so specific with our medical vocabulary, no? And letter G, an anesthetic. When would you be given an anesthetic? Oops, excuse me. Well, of course you will be given an anesthetic if you're going to have an operation, no? What is an anesthetic? No? An anesthetic, no, is something which makes you fall asleep, no? So that you are not going to be disturbed by your operation anesthetic. No? It can be general anesthetic, or it can be local anesthetic. No? So that's question number 2. Let's look at number 3 now. Now, when might you need to see A, your GP, B, a specialist, and C, a surgeon? Well, maybe I think, again, this could be familiar vocabulary, but let's make sure we know what we're talking about. So, number 3, A was your GP. When would you see your GP? Well, you would go and visit your GP for any small medical problem or, for example, to get an appointment to see a specialist. Now, GP stands for General Practitioner, and that is a doctor who deals with general medical problems that don't require a specialist. Anytime you go to your health centre to see your doctor, you go to your GP. No, so the GP is like the family doctor, but we usually call them in English GPs. Okay? When would you see a specialist? Well, you would probably see a specialist because you have a medical problem that requires advice or treatment from a doctor who is an expert in that field. No? So the specialist is like the expert. No? So for more specific information. No? And letter C, when would you see a surgeon? Well, obviously you would see a surgeon if you need to have an operation, because a surgeon is a doctor who does operations. So far, so good? Well, that's question number 3. Let's go on to number 4. What are the symptoms? Ooh, A, a cold, B, the flu, C, food poisoning, D, a heart attack, E, asthma, and F, a stroke. Now, letter F, a stroke in English, is also called a cerebrovascular accident. So essentially what happens is that there is the death of some brain cells, no? Maybe due to a blockage or lack of oxygen or something like that. So a stroke in English is usually related to the brain, and it's also known as a cerebrovascular accident. Okay, now let's have a look at the symptoms. Oh, I think we can be good at symptoms. I think we're hearing a lot about symptoms on the news these days. Let's see. So we're looking at question number 4, the symptoms of a cold. Well, I think sneezing, achoo, coughing, and a runny nose. No? What about the flu? Well, they're usually the same as for a cold, but also with a temperature and general aches and pains. No? What about food poisoning? Oh, terrible, maybe vomiting, being sick, and perhaps diarrhea. No? What about a heart attack? Well, usually the typical one would be chest pain or increased or irregular heart rate. No? Letter E, asthma, coughing, again, especially at night, and generally difficulty in breathing. No? Letter F, a stroke. Well, you would have speech difficulty, weakness or loss of feeling in one arm, and loss of feeling in one side of the face. These are the symptoms of a stroke. No? Now, question number 5 is the last one. Let's have a look. What might happen if you, A, had to stand for a long time in a hot, crowded room, B, were stung on your hand by a bee, or C, switched on a light with wet hands? Oh, let's check. I don't like those ones. Let's see. Okay, question number 5. Here we go. Here it is. Here it is. Well, if you had to stand for a long time in a hot, crowded room, I know this would definitely happen to me. You might faint. I'm going to take out the might and I'm going to say I would definitely faint. It's happened before and I'm sure it will happen again. Letter B. What might happen if you were stung on your hand by a bee? Well, you might have an allergic reaction. Hopefully you wouldn't, but you might have an allergic reaction. You might get a rash or your hand might swell. Now, if something swells, it gets bigger than its usual size, usually because of irritation or soreness. Now, and letter C, what would you do if you switched on the light with wet hands? If you're lucky, you might get an electric shock. If you're unlucky, you would get electrocuted. What a happy thought to leave you on today. So let's see. This is our unit, doctor's orders, and the next exercise is a reading exercise. Thanks for listening.